All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the call. This is Nikki Cotton. For those of you that don't know Chris or myself, Chris, wave your hand. Chris and I have been hosting the HEAT team calls for, I don't know, 20 years. It's been a long time. It's been an incredible journey. We've had amazing speakers. We've had great trainers, and we've had lots of fun. And we've had great celebrations since we've gone virtual. So tonight we really have a special event, especially for me. I'm very excited about it. Hey, Michael. Hey, Mariah. Yeah, it's going to be a fun call tonight. So we are, Chelsea, my daughter, Chelsea Cotton, and I'll introduce her in a second. We've been spending a lot of time together over the past few months because of COVID and the cabin and us going back and forth between Oregon. And I really got to see another side of Chelsea that I hadn't gotten to see before, which is her professional side and her coaching side. And I've had some great spontaneous coaching with her, one of which happened last week. And at the end of it, I said, oh my gosh, can we turn this into a call? So that's what we're doing tonight. I'm going to introduce her professionally. So I'm going to spotlight her right now. There's Chelsea Cotton. Chelsea calls herself a feral visionary coach. And when I asked her what that meant, what that really is, I'm going to tell you what she answered me, and it made a lot of sense to me. A feral visionary coach teaches us, or her coachees, not only through teaching, but through experience, to listen to our bodies, to our heart, to our intention, our intuition, our intuitive strategies, our mindset, which helps us find a creative way of being for a soulful connection to our work. So, and if anybody wants me to type that out, I just thought of having a soulful connection to your work. And I know that some of you have had that experience, what it's like to be fully embodied in the kind of work that you do that gives you total fulfillment and passion. And in relationship to communication, all of those things apply as well. And I can't remember if Chelsea was going to say this or me, so I'm just going to say it for now, is that I'm just going to offer you up that whatever Chelsea uses as a way to move through the evening tonight, those are tools that you can actually use yourself before you have conversations. It's not just about tonight. So, of course, and we called it empowered communication. Chelsea, I'm turning this over to you.
Okay, thank you. I first just have to say how grateful I am and honored and a little nervous to get to be with you all tonight. It doesn't matter how many times I'm on Zoom calls or teaching or training, the honor of getting to be in circle with people always, you know, kind of lights me up and is new. And getting to see some of the faces that I recognize both also is exciting to me, but a little nerve-wracking. And with this change of spotlight, which I've never experienced before, I only now really see myself, which is a little like, oh, I get to just watch me inside of this. But I'm so grateful to be here. And as my mom said, everything that we do tonight, it's going to be interactive, it's going to be embodied, it's experiential, but they're all tools that I use in service to, I'm going to say actually whole body listening and communicating from like life force energy. And tonight we're really going to be taking on some of the bigger like macro pieces of communication and why, and then tools to help support that. There's two other pieces before we drop into activity that I want to share. And one is
Chelsea, if you want to see people, I believe that you can put it on gallery view on your own computer and you don't have to see yourself on Spotlight.
Yay, I don't have to see myself on Spotlight. I get to see all you. One, and as we're in, and I'm going to say in circle, because that's how I hold this, even though we see each other in little boxes, is that we're all wisdom keepers. We all carry wisdom, and at the same time, we all are in a beginner seat. We're all ongoing learners. So I really invite this experience tonight where you get to bring and carry your wisdom and honor that, value that, be confident in that, while also being willing to sit in a beginner's mind of what else might be available here for me and what might be new that I haven't experienced. Some of you have done all kinds of this kind of work. Some of you may be totally new, and all of that is welcomed. And the other piece I want to say, do you have something to say? Oh, okay. The other thing I want to mention is that I often use feminine language. And that's not about gender, that's not about male or female, but it is about reclaiming feminine parts of ourselves that live in all of us. And so I invite you, as I may use language, particularly, like I said, feminine language, to just experience that, be open to that, be willing, and just notice how that feels in your body, whether it resonates or not, but just be inside of the practice of that. So are we all up for that? Can we get like a hands up or a little, however you want to gesture? Yes. Okay, so what I'm going to invite us to do is actually close our eyes if we feel comfortable to do so, and if not, just have a soft gaze. Get comfortable in your seat. Just take a deep breath in. Let it all go. Another big belly breath full. And as you release, letting all that air move down and out through the soles of your feet. And one more big breath together. And if this time you feel comfortable doing so when you exhale, just making a long sigh or noise, just letting anything out that does not serve in this moment. And placing a hand on your heart and a hand on your belly. And just giving yourself this moment of pause. Maybe it's the first time today that you've really given yourself this gift of pausing. Of coming back to conscious awareness of your breath. Just letting yourself kind of catch up with yourself after all you've done, all you've held. Just notice how this feels as you give yourself this moment, becoming present here, knowing there's nowhere else you have to be for now. This is for you, and really giving yourself this gift. And taking a moment to give gratitude for anything that is alive in your life right now that just feels real in this moment that you have gratitude for. Just with your next breath, really filling your whole body with this felt sense of that gratitude. And from this place of gratitude, I invite you at this as a practice. We're going to really listen to our hearts and check in with our heart this evening. So take a moment and just check in on the surface of your heart and what is present, what's alive there. Trusting in whatever comes, whether it makes sense or not. And with your next inhale, I'm going to invite us to just go a layer deeper into your heart. And notice what might just be below the surface. Continuing to breathe, and with your next inhale, one more time, we're going to go one layer deeper. Just dropping a little bit further down into your heart and being willing to hear, listen, explore what else may be present here. And trusting in your own heart's wisdom and how she shares and what reveals itself. And taking one more breath and asking your heart what's important about communication from her perspective. So from your heart's perspective, what's important about communication from her perspective? And if you, as you receive this message, you can take a moment, if you have a piece of paper or journal, and just jot that down. And I'm going to have a few more reflection questions for you. And the second one is, if you were to use 3 words to describe your style of communication, if you were to use 3 words to describe your style of communication, what would they be? And the last reflection question for now, what are your strengths and weaknesses in your communication? And when you're complete, let's just take a moment to give gratitude to our hearts and our heart wisdom, and one way that we can also listen to what we know. And I'd love to hear from a few of you, both voice and or if you want to chat it, anything that came up inside of that experience. How did that feel? Any of the answers that arose from these questions? Oh, can we unmute?
There you go.
Yeah.
And, all right. My 3 that came to me were validating, present, and non-assuming or non-judgmental. Sometimes the weakness that shows up is lack of assertiveness. And I believe that the 3 that I mentioned earlier, the validating, the present, and non-assuming or non-judgmental, are also part of my strengths, as well as the ability to hold a container of love for the person I'm engaging with at that moment.
Tova, do you want to share? Tova said her style of communication is loud. And mine is laser. I tend to be very laser.
Beautiful. Thank you, family. Just 1 or 2 more. Again, either in the chat or voice.
Hi, Cher. So my 3 words, I didn't really have 3 words, but I came up with interesting. Well, my heart says empathy and connection. My 3 words were wordy, cutting off people, and animated, which can also, like, I guess animated can be a strength. Cutting off people is definitely a weakness, and being too wordy can be a weakness, as well as I put, sometimes very often I'll listen to the thoughts in my head rather than listening to the needs of others. But I am good with usually coming out with a positive outcome, and coming from the intention of really wanting to be able to help.
Love it, Heidi. Thank you. You've given us all little pieces already for what we're going to do tonight. So thank you. Wordy, cutting off people, but also the strength of empathy, and Michael, what you shared too, present and compassion, and non-assuming. So 1 more person I'd love to hear.
I can speak. My strength is that I can find the base of what I want to say and express it with clarity and concise, like clear and concise. My weakness is that I'm not so great at asking questions. I get so excited that I just like want to talk and explain, express. And so it's been a journey in my life to take time and take breath and listen and really receive what the other's wanting to say.
Well, thank you. And Nikki said, my style is direct, passionate, and clarity. Also strengths and my weakness can be impatient and interruptive. So can we all kind of relate to what has been shared and said, all of us in different ways, resonate in some form? Yeah. So tonight, one, I want to say that we could do a whole weekend workshop, and there are plenty of weekend workshops in this, and we're going to try and fit it into the next 15 minutes. So I'm going to kind of go through it quickly and try to hit some 3 key points that felt really important to bring tonight. And one of them is, and I spoke to it at the beginning, but communication as life force energy. So how many of us have had conversations where we walk away and we feel filled up and inspired and have more energy than we went into and like just are ready to go after that kind of conversation? Can you raise your hand, thumbs up, or do a dance? And how many of us have had conversations where we totally feel drained and our life force is totally gone and we never want to talk to someone ever again? And that may be because that person went on and on and on and on, or it might be because we went on and on and on and on. It goes both ways, where we can feel like we've been totally drained. And so I'm curious, how would we all like to have way more conversations that actually fill and fuel our life force energy? Yeah. So one thing that I want to share is that, you know, I know that there's been amazing trainings about how we shorten our story, our business story or a Juice Plus story, make it 2 minutes or shorter, commitments to do 30 seconds on Voxer or shorter. And that's really important, but those are tools and practices to help support us to be able to articulate. And I want to bring some larger macro pieces around why that matters. And one of the reasons why that matters is this life force energy. So one thing for me, when I'm communicating with someone, I'm committed to that life force. I also might talk about that as the divine or the universe or God, all of that. We all have different language around that. But that thing that really can fill us up, that feels bigger than us, that's that creative energy. And often we can allow someone to go on and on and on because we don't want to hurt their feelings, because we don't want to actually pause them. So Heidi, I'm going to push back a little bit and say sometimes interrupting people is actually important if there's a drainage of life force energy. Now, that's your own thing to learn and discern if we're interrupting and cutting off that energetic exchange, or we're actually allowing it so that we stop the drainage. Does this make sense? So one of the things that helps us is really a cue to know if we're in that life force energy drainage or filling up is how our body feels inside of those experiences. So I would love again for a few people to jump out, and what does it feel like when you're inside of a conversation that feels like life force?
And my suggestion is whoever hasn't spoken yet, this is a great opportunity to really speak up in front of a group where it's safe and feel like you are emerging into your own leadership and your own experience of communication. So for those of you that hadn't had an opportunity, you know, I'm kind of looking around like Lisa and Crystal and Julianne and maybe Cassidy that, you know, we haven't heard from you tonight. If you're open and willing to play, I'm going to offer you up as a sacrifice.
Chelsea,
As
can you,
life force energy, as life force energy.
Chelsea, can you repeat the question?
Yes, how does it feel in your body? Like, what are the cues in your body that you are in a life force conversation, let's say?
So you're feeling filled up.
Looks like we got Krista. Yeah.
I feel like, to me, it kind of feels like I'm connecting with a deeper part of myself, even as I'm connecting with another person. And it feels just as beneficial to me, whether I'm in a listening role or not, or I'm in a venting role. But I feel like it goes back and forth to the point where it just feels like such a connection between the two people, to almost where it just kind of feels like you're talking with yourself, almost like you're talking with that life force. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the first thing that came to mind for it.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Beautiful, thank you.
Chelsea, Krista, help me with this. That was good. The conversation turns into being transformational for both of us instead of transitional
Or transactional.
or transactional. Thank you.
Yeah. One more. What's your body cues that you're inside of? Maybe Lisa, you can share how does it feel in your body when you're in that kind of conversation?
So when I'm in that kind of conversation, I feel at ease. I start leaning in. You almost feel excited and just, like you can't get enough of it, basically.
Yeah, you don't want it to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to just keep with you for a moment. How does it feel when you are in a draining, like either you're going on and on or someone else is going on and on? What are the body cues there?
Well, if somebody else is going on and on, I mean, I tend to start looking past them, or if it's in front of them, or we're looking at each other, and I do start feeling like I want to end the conversation, like you were saying, like just like stop it and go, so get talking about something else, and I get kind of anxious and just like, I don't know, I feel like I stop paying attention even though I'm still listening, and when I'm doing that, I notice myself doing that when I feel uncomfortable when I'm talking to somebody and I'm not feeling like I'm getting my point across, or whatever it is, they're not understanding me. That makes me feel anxious too. My stomach starts to kind of get butterflies and I'm like, oh my God, I just need to shut up now. Why am I not shutting up? I don't understand. But so I'm more anxious.
Thank you so much for sharing all those pieces and the vulnerability of that. And one thing I really want to underscore here is often what you just shared, and we all have different experiences, but when someone is going on and on, it is because they're uncomfortable. It's because they, maybe are nervous or anxious, or they just so want to be seen or so want to be heard. And so they're trying to take up like more space with their words, even though that's not actually the thing that's going to support them. And so as leaders who are talking to people all the time, and as people who are in relationship with people all the time, that is an opportunity to actually really be with someone and either pause ourselves, actually go, oh, this body cue, I'm not at ease, I'm anxious, I'm nervous, is letting me know I'm not actually comfortable or something else is happening here. So to pause and then really, take a moment to see what's really wanting to be said. And that's also an opportunity for us, if we're not the ones talking, to do the same thing for someone. And that's where, actually interrupting, potentially pausing someone and going, it feels like there's so much you want to say. Can we pause for a second and just sit with really what wants to be said here? That could be an example. But, you can do it in your own way. And I'm not going to go into that because now we only have 4 minutes. But can you feel how this may support? How does this land in your body as a concept, or as a mind frame to sit with when we're in conversations with people?
So Chelsea, I have a question. I actually have 2 questions. One, when you're with somebody and you're having a conversation, and somebody is rambling or whatever, do you ever say, do you actually, even if they've never heard this, do you actually use the words, can I pause you for a minute, or can we pause for a moment? That's my first question. So you do.
I do.
And then the second thing is when you find that you're the one doing it, to take that pause for yourself, do you actually say, can we just hang on for 1 second? I need to find some clarity, or I need to pause myself and regroup. I mean, how do you handle it when you find yourself in that position?
I do. I stop, and often because I just touch my body a lot, because it helps me ground, it helps me get in, it helps me remind me to be here. So often I put my hands on my chest and I just go, man, I need to pause for a second. And I need to take a deep breath and then I'll keep going. Because often, how many of us experience like even just one deep breath can remind us like really what our intention is, or where we are, or even to give us ourselves that space. And when we do that, it gives other people permission to do the same. And it actually invites them to breathe and pause. And I will say right now in our world, as much breathing and pausing as we can do is probably really supportive.
And I have one more thing. You asked me today in some questions where you got me to get really clear about something. And I don't remember exactly the question, but you said, it wasn't like it was something about your North Star, but what's the one thing you most want for you to understand in what I wanted? Like, what's the most important thing that you want for me to get? And as soon as you said that, all the other extra stuff, all the pieces fell apart. And it was the one thing that got very clear. So when you paused me and you asked me that, what's the one thing that's the most important thing for me to know about this tonight? That was really useful for me also.
Yeah, I think there are particular questions, and I heard that that's a part of something that even you want some more work around. A few of you spoke to that, like, what are the questions that I use, and how do I get curious in a way that actually has heart and meaning and not just where maybe I want to go? Because that's important too. We might have a bunch of questions, but unless we're actually present with someone, committed to their life force and our own life force, that question may not actually come into place. But when we take that moment of pause, it has well, a greater possibility to do so, and definitely still a deeper connection either way.
And we've got more time, Chelsea. We started a few minutes late, so we're going to go at least 6:35 just so that you get in your full.
And I think this is an important question, Chelsea, that you've pointed out to me before. For all of us that I see on this screen and in this business, that we get flustered sometimes, especially if we're talking maybe about Juice Plus, because there's a little bit of an agenda there. And then we notice that there's been a switch of energy to the person you're talking to. Okay, or at least doesn't even have to be them, could be anything, a switch of energy in the conversation. And can you tie that into the importance of recognizing that shift in energy and how you would handle it?
Yeah, well, it literally would depend on each situation and what kind of conversation that you're happening. And but often I find that, especially if we're talking about life force energy, being really direct with a lot of compassion and love. So I might say, it feels like something shifted here. Can you share more? So just being straight, like, feels like something shifted. Tell me more about that. It also then gives you, it pauses that, it gives you an opportunity to check in with yourself. It also, as Michael gave us, he said, I'm non-assuming. That allows because we can create so many stories, right? Especially in Juice Plus, like, oh, they don't like me, it's about money, it's about this, it's about that. And in reality, it's like, oh, you said something and it brought up this memory about my grandmother. And I just was with that. Well, we couldn't have created that. We didn't know, right? So it brings us into more connection in that way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I'd love to move on to the second. There's 3. We may only do 2 tonight. But there's a piece, and Michael, you also kind of brought this up, this second approach or theme. I'm not quite sure what I want to speak to it about, but is trusting and valuing our own knowing, and really allowing ourselves to be confident inside of what we do know. So often, well, I'm going to give a couple reflection questions. How often, and I want you to just, in this moment, kind of scale 1 to 10, 1 being almost never and 10 being all the time. How often do you trust your own knowing? How often do you trust your own knowing? And that's for you to just get to be with, not as a make wrong or anything, but just, okay, oh, this is where I'm at. How often do you end sentences with a question when it's a statement? Like, I am Chelsea. I am wearing a blue shirt. I have really good friends on this call. That could be a question, actually, maybe. And how often do you see your teammates do that? Or your teammates. Again, these are just places to get to kind of take stock and where we get to notice and really claim our own value and confidence. So that's one of the ways that can often be portrayed when we are speaking something, but we end it with a question, that we're not claiming our own confidence, our own knowing. So that's just something to get to kind of play and explore on your own. And with that, there's some other questions that I love to sit with before I go into any conversation or a meeting or a training or relationship conversation. Like, this can be used in so many ways, but great reflections for me to remember my own value and come with that, again, a wisdom keeper, even inside of the beginner's mind. And so I'd love to offer some of those questions for you to just get to hold. What do you already know? What do you already know about the situation that you're walking into or experiencing? What do you already know? What skills do you have inside of this situation? So often we are taught to compartmentalize and go, oh, as a mom, I'm a mom here. Oh, in my business, I'm business here and professional here. Oh, as friend, I'm friend here. And we often negate so many skills that we actually have as a mother into these other places. So what skills do you already have? And what resources do you have access to? Examples of that for me are like, I have access to my devotion, to my faith, to my connection. I have access to like doing journaling. I have access to touching my body. So it can be really simple. I'm gonna say it can be really simple things that can remind us and support us as we go into a conversation of the value that we're already bringing, even if we're totally new inside of it. So I'm going to pause there for a second and see if any of you have any, like, how does that feel in your body? What comes up as you hear that?
I just want to share that when I first heard you say, what do you already know? I feel like sometimes it's so easy for us to assume that we already know without asking those validating questions, when the situation could be very different or could have changed from what you did know about them before.
Yeah, I totally agree, Heidi. And I think even adding in what don't you know is a powerful question to also ask.
Chelsea, is the intention of asking oneself this question to be able to be more fully present into the gifts that we offer and bring to the interaction?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for that, Michael. Yeah. And these are not the
The
only,
value.
yeah. So that we're really getting to claim and come inside of this being confident inside of what we already are bringing. There's so many other questions to get to look at inside of a larger scope in terms of a conversation that you may want to ask, like, what don't I know? But these are some, just a few questions that you can ask, and you can do that really quickly before you go into something to like remind yourself, let yourself feel that, and walk in with some more confidence and clarity about what you also have to offer.
So it feels like, for example, if I'm going to do one of my first presentations or something about Juice Plus, I may feel like I don't know very much about Juice Plus. What I do know inside of that container is that I'm willing to learn, I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to be open, I'm willing to find information for somebody. I know that I have good core values. I mean, those are some things that I know coming into a conversation about me in any other situation that I bring to the party, even if I don't know a lot about exactly what it is that we're going to be talking about. I do know those things. And that gives me a sense of confidence, even though there's things that clearly about what we're going to talk about, I may not know.
So I want us all to just take a deep breath in. Just notice how you feel in your body in this moment. and let it go. Maybe where your presence is in this moment. And is there anything else that wants to be said about this particular one? Again, knowing that this is like multi-layered and we're taking on like little pieces. Okay, do I have time to share this last one? Is that okay, real quick? Okay. This third one is listen for what has heart and meaning. And this comes from Quakers. It's really powerful way of being with one another. So listen for what has heart and meaning. So when truth is spoken, like capital T truth, how do you know it? How does that feel in your body? Do you have experience when someone speaks truth? I guess I should ask this. When someone really speaks truth, can you feel that in your body? And what does that feel like? It anchors. What else? Who else? I'd love to hear from some, oh, yeah, Patty.
I think it allows you to grow too. You know, maybe it's words are not something you want to hear, but it also helps you to take a look inside and see if that's maybe an area that needs to change and to grow.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it allows for growth, transformation, again, that life force. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. One more person. I think, Mom, you said Cassidy was a name that I heard you say. Cassidy, would you mind sharing? Oh. Well, Kate is sharing, when the truth emerges from lots of unclarity, it feels like lightness.
And Cassidy answered, it builds character and conversation.
Oh, great.
Her mic isn't working.
It's nice to hear a voice even through this. Okay, so it builds character and conversation. So we already, one of the pieces that again got brought up was, I don't quite know what the questions to ask. This is a place to start. When we can listen for what has heart and meaning, that's the place that has juice, that has energy for the next question or curiosity that can come from that. So when we really listen to that, rather than, again, being on our own agenda, we can really be present and attuned to then what that next question might be. Does that make sense? Is there anything else that wants to be said? How does your body feel as this lands? Just like listen for what has heart and meaning. What does that mean to you?
There's like a feeling of connection between the players and like an understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, and you don't feel alone when there's kind of a truth being said.
Yeah, you don't feel alone. That's beautifully stated. So in closing, I have a few assignments, if you're willing to take them, for you to practice some of these pieces. And one of them is to find a buddy, a communication buddy. And I want you to, whenever you speak with each other, really be coaches to one another around these three kind of ways of conversation. And I'm going to ask just a few things of you around that. So one is that no matter whether one of you feels like you're a really great communicator and the other one doesn't, that you're both willing to be coached. So you are both willing to be coached. Two, that you're both willing to pause each other. So if you're in a life-draining conversation, pause. And I'm going to offer a few. Again, it can be, hey, I just want to pause you for a sec. I would actually ask your partner, how do you want to be paused? Do you want me to pause you? Do you want me to put up a hand? Do you want me to make a weird gesture so we don't get so serious inside of this? Do you want to, like what is going to help you pause and remember that this is a practice, connect back in, and then continue from there. And then, and really have fun. And then the last thing I really want to ask you is to give real-time feedback. let's really commit to each other's life force energy. We don't want each other's life forces to drain. We want to be committed to that as a bigger picture rather than hurting someone's feelings. We can work through hurting someone's feelings. And if we're more committed to their life force energy than the hurting of feelings, so much more is possible. Okay, and we'll write these up and put them on the Facebook group. And I also really believe in tiny changes, making like micro movements. So I'd love for you to sit for a moment and just sit with what would be one tiny change this week, and I mean tiny, that might support you in any one of these three themes. And tiny really means like, I'm going to once this week do this in a conversation. Once this week, I'm going to really pause before I go in and pray or whatever that might be for you, and then talk.
For me, it's hearing myself interrupt when I'm cutting somebody off, not because I need to be interrupting. I'm just going to notice how many times I can actually be aware of that. Like, oh, I interrupted just now. Oh, I interrupted just now, just to be aware of it.
Beautiful. I will say that's not totally a tiny change,
Oh.
but I love, yeah, see, we want to go big. I'm going to start tracking every time I interrupt someone. Just notice once this week, Mom, when you interrupt someone. And then if you do it more, awesome. That's like bonus points, but micro changes. And I know this can be really hard for stuff. So I'd love in the last minute to hear a few tiny changes if that feels clear to you, and what are you taking away? Like one thing that you're taking away from this conversation. And if you're willing to put it in the chat as well, what are you taking away?
Chelsea, I first of all want to say, when I saw you put your hand up like that, the first thing that came to mind was stop in the name of love, which is kind of essentially what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
It kind of came to my mind. But I definitely love the pausing and taking a breath to really center and feel the energy in that moment. That's what I'm committing to do.
Beautiful. And I'm seeing asking more questions than making statements, taking a step back before entering a conversation to build confidence, being able to pause and regroup my thoughts. Love it. One more voice. What are you taking away?
I'll go. I realize that I like to end a lot of my statements with questions. So I think I'm going to just try to be aware of that when that happens this week.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was really great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight with me. I'm so grateful. And I do this coaching one-on-one more than just specifically around communication, but really embodiment and soulful communication, both one-on-one and in group. So if you're interested, I'd love to connect with you. And I'm so grateful. Thank you for letting me get to be with you tonight.
And if you all would like to unmute yourselves and put out just one word for what this half hour, 40 minutes was for you. One word.
Awareness.
Proud.
Empowering.
Enlightening.
Joyful.
Yeah, empowering.
Thank
Awakening.
you so much, Chelsea.